You've been taught your entire life that time is a straight line, a sequence, a rigid progression, a one-way hallway you walk through from birth to death with no door on either side and no chance to step off the path. But that was never true, not even for a moment. The idea that you only have one timeline was a story given to you, a narrative passed from one unconscious mind to another, because a being who believes reality is fixed is a being that can be controlled. A being who believes they only get one life trajectory, one destiny, one identity, one possibility, is a being who will never question the invisible walls shaping their life. But you're starting to feel it, aren't you? That strange sense that your life could have unfolded differently. That feeling that certain choices pull you into a different version of reality. That sensation that you're not just living a life, you're shifting through it. You notice moments where time bends around your awareness, moments where something clicks and suddenly your entire future feels different, moments where you swear reality just rewrote itself in the space between two breaths. And you're not imagining it, you're not overthinking, you're not being woo-woo. You're waking up to the truth your soul has known across lifetimes. You're not walking through time. Time is rearranging itself around you. Your life isn't a line, it's a field. A massive branching structure of possible outcomes responding to your state of consciousness. Every thought, every choice, every self-perception, every emotional frequency moves you onto a slightly different timeline. You do this constantly, effortlessly, automatically, but because no one taught you the mechanics, you mistake these shifts for coincidence, intuition, luck, misfortune, synchronicity, déjà vu. You call them strange moments, you call them glitches, you call them signs from the universe. But what they are, at their core, is movement. Your consciousness sliding into a different version of reality based on the vibration you're embodying. No one told you that timelines are tuned like frequencies. No one told you that identity is the steering wheel. No one told you that a shift in your self-concept is literally a shift in the world around you. Because if you knew that, if you truly understood that your internal state collapses a different external outcome, you would stop living the timeline assigned to you and start living the timeline designed for you. You would stop waiting for life to change and start changing the version of you that life responds to. You would stop thinking of reality as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something that reorganizes around your vibration. Timeline shifting isn't woo-woo, it's not fantasy, it's not escapism. It's the nature of consciousness interacting with the quantum universe. But waking up to this truth is destabilizing. It contradicts everything you've been taught to believe about life, logic, cause and effect, and your place in the world. Because if timelines are fluid, then so is meaning, so is destiny, so is identity, so is possibility, so is truth. Nothing is fixed, nothing is final, nothing is predetermined, not the future, and not the version of you living inside it. This is why your awakening feels disorienting, because you're starting to sense the edges of the simulation bending. You're starting to notice that your reality isn't solid, it's responsive. It listens. It echoes your internal state back to you in external form. When you feel stuck, reality freezes. When you shift your vibration, reality follows. When you embody a new identity, the world rearranges itself to match. And when you awaken, truly awaken, you start to see the pattern. You start to see the doors. You start to see the intersections. You start to see the hidden branching points that were always there but completely invisible when you were operating on autopilot. You start to remember what your soul has always known. There are infinite versions of you already existing across infinite timelines, and your consciousness is the bridge between them. You're not learning something new. You're remembering something ancient, forbidden, hermetic, passed down in whispers through esoteric schools that understood reality as not a singular path, but a forest of paths you shift through by frequency. And if you feel the pull in your chest right now, if something inside you is leaning forward, if a part of you feels like it's waking up after sleeping for lifetimes, then you're already shifting, right now, in real time. You're stepping out of the timeline chosen for you and into the timeline chosen by you. And now that the veil is cracking, now that you've felt the first destabilizing truth, it's time to reveal what the ancients knew about the structure of reality itself. The hidden architecture behind every timeline you've ever lived and every timeline still waiting for you to step into it. In the oldest mystery schools, long before physics discovered parallel realities, long before the word timeline existed, the ancients spoke of something far more daring, far more forbidden: the paths of becoming. Not one path, not a destiny carved in stone, not a single thread of fate, but many branches, lines, currents, a fluid architecture of possibility that shifted as consciousness shifted. In the temples of Kem, in chambers lit only by oil flames dancing against carved stone walls, initiates were taught. You do not walk the path, you weave it. This was the first secret, a truth so destabilizing that it was reserved only for those whose minds had already shed the rigid beliefs of the waking world. Because to the uninitiated, reality appears fixed, solid, unmoving, a single story unfolding forward. But to the adepts, those who had crossed Mot's veil, reality was a multi-layered field, an ever-changing tapestry woven from consciousness itself. The myth of the splintered sun. There was an ancient tale whispered in Hermetic circles, a story meant not to entertain, but to awaken. They said the sun was not one light, but many, 1,000 rays, each representing a different version of reality. To the ordinary eye, the sun looks singular, but to the awakened eye, each ray is a timeline, a beam of possibility stretching into its own unfolding story. And the human soul? It was said to stand at the center of those rays, its consciousness choosing which light to follow through vibration, intention, and identity. You do not live in time, the priest said. You move among its rays. The symbol of the lotus of paths. Many wondered why the lotus was sacred, why so many deities are depicted rising from it, why it appears in texts from Egypt, India, Tibet, and pre-Atlantean carvings. The lotus was not a flower, it was a map, a symbol of timelines, branching simultaneously from a single source. The stem represented your core essence, the higher self. The petals represented all the different versions of your life, each opening, closing, expanding, or dissolving based on your state of consciousness. The lotus taught initiates, you exist at the stem, the petals are your timelines. And the most sacred teaching, where your awareness rests, that petal blooms. This was the earliest visual metaphor for quantum timeline mechanics, hidden in plain sight beneath religious symbolism. The Emerald Tablets and the River of Worlds. In the Emerald Tablets, those cryptic fragments attributed to Thoth himself, there is a line often overlooked, often mistranslated, because its meaning was too advanced for the age. I have seen the worlds grow and dissolve, each one a ripple of the greater stream. What is a world if not a timeline? What is a ripple if not a shift? Thoth wasn't describing outer planets, he was describing streams of reality. Parallel worlds that rise and fall according to the vibration of the traveler. The tablets taught that timelines are currents. Identity is the boat, awareness is the oar, and vibration is the direction. Those who mastered their frequency could move through these currents consciously, not by force, but by alignment. This is the real meaning of as above, so below. The inner state shifts the outer world. The forgotten Atlantean science. Before the collapse of Atlantis, before the great flood wiped out entire sciences, there was a discipline called chronometrics, the study of how consciousness interacts with time. Atlantean scribes believed time was not linear at all, it was holographic, a multi-dimensional field where infinite outcomes exist simultaneously, and the consciousness chooses which one to collapse into experience. They taught that trauma locks you into repeating timelines, fear locks you into low-frequency branches, social programming forces you into collective default timelines, but awakening, real awakening, activates higher pathways that were always available but inaccessible at lower states. This science disappeared not because it was lost, but because the world was not ready to hold its truth. It would have given too much power to the individual. Because imagine a world where every human knew that their choices, beliefs, and identity reshape the timeline they occupy. Imagine how uncontrollable they would be. The hidden key, the self that splits. One of the deepest Hermetic secrets was the teaching of the split self. The idea that every major decision you make creates a divergence. But not in the way modern sci-fi imagines. It wasn't about infinite worlds branching infinitely. It was about infinite versions of you existing simultaneously across different timeline expressions. The ancients believed, when you change, you do not change the timeline. You change the self who is experiencing it. This is why timelines shift when your self-perception shifts. Reality doesn't need to move. You do. The veil of intersections. There was a symbol carved onto the walls of initiation chambers, 3 interlocking circles. One stood for the past you, one for the present you, one for the potential you. Where they overlapped was the doorway, the intersection point where timelines can be rewritten instantly. How? By choosing a version of yourself that matches the timeline you want to occupy. The priests called this stepping into the remembering. You don't create a new timeline. You remember a version of you that already exists in another timeline, and your consciousness shifts there instantly through identity alignment. The final revelation: timelines are choice patterns. Every ancient culture had a version of this teaching. Egyptians taught the paths of becoming. Hermetics taught the layers of reality. India taught the lokas. Tibet taught the Bardo realms. Greece taught the many worlds of the mind. Atlantis taught chronometric flow. Different languages, same truth. Timelines are not physical, they are vibrational. They respond to the state of the traveler. You don't shift timelines by force, you shift by resonance. When your vibration matches another version of reality, that reality becomes the one you experience. This was the great hidden knowledge. The truth kept sacred, kept protected, kept encoded in symbols, because when a human knows this, they become unpredictable, uncontrollable, unprogrammable. They stop living the story they were handed and start living the story aligned with their highest frequency. And now that you've entered this knowledge, now that you've stepped beyond the outer veil, you're ready for what comes next. The mechanism, the architecture, the quantum engine behind timeline shifting. If ancient myth gave you the symbols, then this is where we decode the system behind those symbols. The mechanics, the architecture, the engine driving every timeline you've ever stepped into, and every timeline still waiting for you. Because once you understand the how, you'll stop hoping your reality will change and start shifting into the version of reality that matches your vibration. The universe is not holding anything back from you. You are stepping into the frequency of what you are ready to experience. Let's break this down with absolute clarity and zero mystification, but without stripping away the mystical truth that science hasn't yet learned how to language. 1. Timelines are not places, they are frequency fields. Your timeline is not a location in the universe. It's not a parallel planet. It's not a duplicate Earth. It's not a cosmic branching highway you jump between. A timeline is a bandwidth of reality that resonates with a specific state of consciousness. This means when your thoughts shift, your frequency shifts. When your emotional state shifts, your timeline shifts. When your identity shifts, your world rearranges. When your beliefs shift, your future changes its shape. Timelines are tuned like radio stations. You experience the station you're broadcasting from. You don't travel to another timeline. You tune into it. Just like a radio doesn't move from place to place, it just shifts frequency and receives a different broadcast. You don't move into new realities. You receive them through your vibration. 2. Consciousness collapses reality through the observer effect. In quantum mechanics, everything exists as potential first, as a cloud of probabilities, not fixed facts. Nothing is solid until it is observed. This is not philosophy, it's physics. The moment an observer enters the system, the wave of potential collapses into a definite outcome, a specific version of reality. That collapse is timeline selection. But here's the part no one tells you. You are not observing through the mind. You are observing through the entire vibrational field of your being. Your beliefs, emotions, expectations, assumptions, identity, trauma, intuition, self-concept, all collapse reality into the timeline you experience. Your consciousness is choosing a version of reality that matches who you believe yourself to be right now. This is the cosmic mechanism. This is the engine. This is timeline shifting at its core. You can only experience the reality you are vibrationally tuned to, not the reality you want, the reality you are. 3. Identity is the steering wheel of your timeline. Most people try to shift timelines by setting goals, thinking positive, scripting, manifesting, affirming, but none of these methods work sustainably if the identity doesn't shift. Your identity is your default frequency, your baseline vibration, your settings for reality. You cannot shift into a timeline where you are a confident, aligned, intuitive, powerful version of yourself if you are still holding the identity of the fearful, doubtful, limited version. Your identity determines which opportunities appear, which people resonate, which experiences come toward you, which synchronicities activate, which version of the future locks in. Identity, frequency. Frequency, timeline, timeline, reality. This is why trying to shift timelines without shifting identity feels like swimming against a cosmic current. You don't force reality to shift. You become the version of you to whom that reality already belongs. 4. Emotional frequency is the fastest timeline shifter. Emotion is not just psychological. Emotion is energetic motion, a vibrational broadcast. High-frequency emotional states, clarity, gratitude, openness, courage, joy, neutrality. Presence tune you into expansive timelines where reality feels fluid, aligned, responsive, synchronistic. Low-frequency emotional states. Fear, shame, guilt, self-doubt, hopelessness, resentment tune you into restrictive timelines where reality feels stuck, repetitive, closed. Every time you shift your emotional state, you shift your timeline, not metaphorically, but quantumly. This is why one moment of deep clarity can change the entire trajectory of your life. You jumped, but what really happened is your vibration moved you onto a different track. Emotion is not a reaction to reality. Emotion is the frequency that selects the reality you collapse. 5. Self-perception controls the probability field. Imagine the quantum field as a giant hall of mirrors, each mirror reflecting a different version of your potential future. You walk toward the mirror that reflects the version of you you subconsciously believe is realistic. Your self-perception is the magnet. It pulls you toward certain outcomes and away from others. This is why people who think they're unlucky experience bad luck. People who believe in themselves attract opportunities. People who expect rejection expect it into existence. People who think they're chosen experience synchronicities. It is not superstition, it is not coincidence. Self-perception collapses the quantum field around the version of reality that matches your inner truth. You always get a timeline that confirms what you believe about yourself, not because the universe punishes or rewards, but because it is vibrationally precise. 6. The ego loop keeps you locked into repeating timelines. The ego's job is repetition, predictability, stability, survival. The ego doesn't care if the timeline is miserable, only that it's familiar. So it keeps you looping. Same thoughts, same emotional patterns, same reactions, same identity, same choices, same timeline. This is why timelines feel fixed, not because they are, but because the ego keeps tuning you to the same vibrational broadcast. A timeline is not permanent, a vibrational echo is. Break the loop, break the timeline. 7. The higher self lives outside time and guides timeline movement. Your higher self isn't future you. It's the version of you outside the simulation of time. It sees all your possible paths, all your potential outcomes, all your parallel selves, all the timelines that match your highest frequency. Intuition, synchronicity, déjà vu. These aren't random. They are timeline markers guiding you toward higher branches. The higher self nudges you toward people who accelerate your growth, experiences that elevate your frequency, decisions that align you with the timeline of your highest expression. When you feel pulled toward something, that is the higher self showing you a timeline shift in progress. 8. Trauma locks you into lower timelines. Trauma freezes your vibration. It traps you in survival mode, lack, fear, unworthiness, repetition, low-frequency emotional states. This is why healing feels like awakening, because you're not just healing emotionally, you're shifting timelines. Trauma locks you into the timeline you were in at the time of the emotional wound. Healing releases that anchor, and suddenly your life can move again. Many people think healing is about the past, but it's actually about the future, because trauma holds you in old timelines and prevents you from reaching the ones aligned with your true frequency. 9. Timeline shifts are felt somatically. When you shift timelines, your body often reacts before your mind understands. Signs you've shifted: sudden clarity or peace. The world feels lighter. Time feels slower or faster. People respond to you differently. Synchronicities cluster. Old patterns stop activating. Your desires change. Things that used to matter stop mattering. Things that felt impossible become obvious. You feel like a different version of yourself. These aren't hallucinations. These are markers of vibrational recalibration. The body knows before the mind does. 10. You shift timelines every time you choose a new version of you. This is the master key, the core mechanic, the hidden engine. You do not shift timelines by forcing reality. You shift by shifting your identity and letting reality reorganize. You don't say, "I want a new reality." You say, "I'm the version of me who naturally exists in that reality." And the universe responds, "Understood." Timeline shifting isn't magic. It's alignment. It's self-selection. It's vibrational authorship. It's consciousness directing the probability field. This is the truth the ancients encoded in myth, and what modern metaphysics is rediscovering now. You don't learn timeline shifting. You remember it, because your soul has done it across lifetimes. Now that the mechanism is clear, you're ready to dismantle the old timelines and step into deliberate timeline authorship. You cannot shift timelines while carrying the identity that was built for the old one. This is the brutal truth most people avoid. They want a new reality, but they refuse to release the old version of themselves that keeps locking them into the same repeating loop. Deprogramming is not gentle, it's not love and light, it's not warm, cozy spirituality. Deprogramming is confrontation, clarity, disruption, a psychological revolution inside your own consciousness. Because every timeline is held in place by the version of you who lives inside it. Change the self, and the timeline loses its shape. This is the moment where you stop being a passenger and become the architect. Let's dismantle the programs that keep you locked into timelines you've already outgrown. Program number 1, I am who my past says I am. This is the first illusion, the loudest one. The one that convinces you the past is a prison. Your past is not your identity. Your past is your memory, and memory is just a bookmark, not a prophecy. But the Matrix wants you to believe otherwise. It wants you to equate trauma with truth, repetition with destiny, pain with personality, survival strategies with identity. Why? Because if the past defines you, then your future can be predicted. And if your future is predictable, you remain controllable. Here's the real truth. Your past is only a timeline you stayed in too long, not who you are. The moment you realize this, your timeline begins to split open. Program number 2, my current reality is the truth. No, your current reality is the result of the person you were yesterday. Today's reality is yesterday's identity wearing a costume. You are not living the truth. You are living the consequences of your old self-concept. But here's the kicker. Most people look at their current life and assume it's fixed, final, permanent. So what do? They adjust themselves to fit the timeline they see instead of adjusting themselves to match the timeline they want. They obey the mirror instead of realizing the mirror obeys them. You're not here to surrender to the timeline. You're here to redirect it. Program number 3, things change when reality changes. This is backwards. This is inverted logic. This is the root of stagnation. Reality doesn't change first. You do. Timelines do not shift because the world moves. Timelines shift because you move in consciousness, in vibration, in identity. Everything you see around you, the job, the relationship, the home, the friends, the opportunities, is an echo, a reflection, a delayed effect of your internal state. Want a different reality? Stop waiting for it. Start becoming the version of you that could naturally exist in it. When you shift, the world has no choice but to rearrange itself. Program number 4, my emotions are reactions to life. This is one of the subtlest traps. You've been trained to believe emotions happen to you, as if they drop from the sky, as if they are neutral readings of reality. But emotions don't reflect reality. Emotions select reality. Your emotional state is the frequency that collapses the timeline you step into. If you feel powerless, you shift into powerless timelines. If you feel sovereign, you shift into sovereign timelines. If you feel confused, your life becomes a maze. If you feel aligned, doors open before you even knock. This is why the Matrix programs emotional instability. Because unstable emotions create unstable timelines. You are not reacting to life. Life is reacting to you. Program number 5, fear is a warning. One of the most effective algorithms of control is the idea that fear equals truth. Fear isn't truth. Fear is unhealed memory trying to keep you in the timeline where it formed. Fear doesn't protect you. Fear imprisons you in the vibrational state where it was created. The Matrix loves fear because fear generates predictable behavior, hesitation, avoidance, obedience, self-sabotage. Fear keeps you walking the same narrow corridor of the same narrow timeline. But courage, even a tiny spark of it, creates a fracture in the simulation. When you act from courage, you step onto a timeline your past self could never reach. Courage is the bridge between who you've been and who you're becoming. Program number 6, I can shift my timeline without shifting myself. No, you can't. You cannot bring an old identity into a new reality. You cannot enter a timeline that contradicts your self-concept. Timelines lock around identity. Identity is the stabilizer, the anchor, the gravitational field that determines which version of reality you inhabit. Trying to shift timelines without shifting identity is like trying to tune into a radio station using the wrong frequency. You don't push into a new timeline, you match it. And the way you match it is by becoming the version of you who already exists there. You don't shift realities by force, you shift by resonance. Program number 7, the future is unknown. This is only true from inside the ego. Your higher self sees every timeline you could inhabit, every version of your life that already exists as potential, and it guides you through intuition, synchronicity, and inner pulls toward the timeline aligned with your highest frequency. The future isn't unknown, the future is plural. You aren't walking into the future, You're choosing which future you want to collapse into now. Program number 8, the world has to change before I do. This belief freezes millions of people in disempowered timelines. The world doesn't go first, you do. You go first in frequency, you go first in identity, you go first in choice, you go first in vibration. You don't wait for the reality you want. You become the person who lives in that reality. Reality is not waiting to change. Reality is waiting for you to shift into the version of you that commands the next timeline. You are the initiator. You are the catalyst. You are the doorway. Program number 9, there's only one me. This is the final illusion, the most persistent one, the one that keeps you locked in your smallest timeline. There is not one you. There are infinite yous, each inhabiting a different timeline, each expressing a different potential, each waiting for your consciousness to align with it. Timeline shifting is not about creating a better future. It's about choosing which version of yourself you want to experience now. The moment you stop insisting that this is who I am, 1,000 versions of you suddenly become available. The old self collapses, the old timeline dissolves, the old patterns lose their gravity, and a new version of you begins to emerge. A version that carries the frequency of the timeline you're ready to live. The turning point. This is the moment, your turning point, the identity fracture, the inner rebellion, the psychological jailbreak. You are no longer asking, how do I change my life? You are asking, who is the version of me that lives in the timeline I desire? And when you answer that, with your behavior, your choices, your emotional state, your self-concept, your vibration, the shift is instant, the timeline is selected, reality begins reorganizing around the new identity. You stop living the timeline you inherited and start living the timeline you choose. This is deprogramming. This is sovereignty. This is the moment the matrix loses its grip. Now you're ready for the final step, activation, the collapse of the old timeline and the embodiment of the new one. Take a slow breath. Feel the weight of your chest soften, as if the air you're inhaling belongs to a different version of reality, because it does. This is the threshold, the crossing point. The moment where timelines bend and identity dissolves and the truth of who you are begins to rise through the cracks in the life you've outgrown. You are not listening to this by accident. You didn't reach this moment by coincidence. Something inside you brought you here. Something older than your name, older than your memories, older than this lifetime. It's the part of you that has shifted timelines more times than you can count. The part of you that remembers what your mind forgot. The part of you that knows reality is fluid and identity is chosen and time is a field you walk through, not a cage you're trapped inside. Let that part speak now, not the fear, not the programming, not the old version of you trying to hold onto the script. Let the remembering rise, let the truth surface. You are not here to fit into the timeline you inherited. You are here to choose the timeline that matches the frequency of who you really are. Feel that. Feel the gravity of it. Feel the authority of it waking up in your chest. This is the moment your consciousness reclaims the steering wheel. The first remembrance, I am not my old self. Say it inside your mind. Say it with your breath. Say it like a quiet rebellion. I am not my old self. The version of you shaped by your past, your wounds, your fears, your inherited beliefs. That version was a timeline traveler, not the traveler itself. You are the awareness behind it, the witness, the observer, the one who collapses possibilities into form. That old identity served a purpose. It kept you safe. It kept you predictable. It kept you aligned with the timeline your nervous system understood. But it is not the identity that will carry you forward. You can thank it. You can release it. You can let it dissolve like smoke drifting out of a story that is no longer yours. The second remembrance, my frequency is my future. Every timeline you desire is already real, but only accessible from the vibration that matches it. You cannot think your way into a new reality. You resonate into it. You tune into it. You shift into it with the frequency of the version of you who already lives there. Feel this truth in your body. Your future is not ahead of you. It is vibrating around you, waiting for you to rise into it. The moment your internal state changes, your external world begins its rearrangement. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. Synchronicities cluster, people shift, opportunities sync, paths open, the atmosphere of your life cracks. This is not magic. This is alignment. This is consciousness choosing a new broadcast. This is you stepping onto a different timeline through the gateway of your vibration. The third remembrance, I choose who I become. Identity is not found. Identity is chosen, consciously, deliberately, sovereignly. You are not awakening into a new personality. You are awakening out of an old one. So ask yourself right here, right now, Who is the version of me that lives in the timeline I desire? How do they think? How do they breathe? How do they stand? How do they speak? What do they tolerate? What do they refuse? What do they trust? What do they release? What do they believe about themselves in the world they are stepping into? You do not wait to become them. You choose to embody them now. And the timeline that matches that version of you will activate instantly. Not tomorrow, not next month, now. Because timelines don't shift in the future. Timelines shift in awareness, in identity, in the present moment where consciousness chooses its trajectory. The fourth remembrance, I am the one who decides. Say it softly, say it firmly, say it with certainty. I decide my timeline. Not fate, not destiny, not the past, not fear, not circumstance, not expectation, not old programming. You decide the direction your consciousness moves. You decide the vibration you hold. You decide which version of you breathe life into. There is no authority above your awareness. There is no force stronger than your alignment. There is no timeline more powerful than the one your soul is calling you into. Your life is not written, it is selected by you, through you, as you. The final remembrance, I shift now. You are standing in the doorway, not metaphorically, energetically, vibrationally, quantumly. And the timeline you step into depends on who you choose to be in this exact breath. So breathe in, out. Feel your awareness rise. Feel your old identity loosen. Feel the timeline you're leaving fade behind you. And now repeat quietly inside yourself, like a code, like a command, like an ancient activation you've spoken across lifetimes. I shift now. I choose my timeline. I embody my highest self. I align with the reality that matches my truth. I step through the threshold. You don't need force. You don't need effort. You don't need to fight the old timeline. You simply rise into the version of you that naturally belongs to the timeline you are choosing. Feel the shift occur inside your chest, like a soft click, a subtle alignment, a recalibration of the field around you. That feeling is your consciousness moving, choosing, transitioning. You have shifted. The field has responded. The timeline has opened. And from this moment forward, your life bends around the version of you chose to become. This is your activation, your remembrance, your return to sovereignty. You are no longer a traveler through time. You are the consciousness that time rearranges itself to follow. Welcome to your new timeline. It begins now.